is part 2 into the Tamla Horsford case. After the discovery of Tamla's body, they call 911, and Jean is the first person on the phone with the dispatcher. She talked for a little bit, never said Tamla's name, which some people found weird, and they just kept saying, "We have a woman here." Jose is asked if she has a pulse. He didn't really do anything or answer any of the questions. He basically tried to bend her leg. He also mentions that there are security cameras and they could take a look and see what happened. But police don't take this with them as evidence, and it's deleted 20 days after this happened. Authorities arrive at 9:07 a.m. and one of the detectives calls off the first responders on the ambulance and tells them not to come. Tamla is then pronounced dead at the scene at 10:47 a.m. One thing they really took note of her was that when she was face down, her head wasn't turned to the left or right. It was just straight into the ground. Her right wrist was fractured or dislocated. Two different things, but that's what it's described as. There was a large bump where her wrist met her hand, as well as a cut over the bump as if the bone had cut the skin from the inside. There was matching defects on both of her shins. These corresponded with a piece of metal landscape edging which stood approximately 1 inch from the surrounding ground. Other than the broken wrist and cuts on her shin, no obvious signs of injury were presented. Her death would be ruled an accident and consistent with a fall. The detective would say that there was no evidence or injury patterns to suggest assault or foul play. But another inconsistency is apparently detectives tried to say that originally she fell from the ground level, not the balcony.
Now we gotta talk about her autopsy.
Her blood alcohol level was 0.24 and there was traces of Xanax and THC in her system. Quote, severe injuries to the head, neck, and torso, several superficial abrasions to her forehead, left eyelid, bridge of her nose, right temple, chin, and a fractured second vertebrae and dislocated wrist. And there was a laceration on the right ventricle of her heart. That last injury alone would be fatal. Something to note, there was no photos done with this autopsy. And by February 20th, 2019, the Sheriff's Department decided to close this case. Her family was very concerned by this and did not believe this was an accident, so they had an additional autopsy done. And in that report, it was said that a good number of her injuries were appearing to have happened to her post-mortem. We have some more red flags popping up with Jose, Jean's boyfriend, the one whose birthday it was and the house they were at.